there, algebras, and welcome to the Chapter 2, Lesson 6 notes, where we are going to now calculate outliers. Before we begin, make sure you have your straight edge. Make sure you have your graphing calculator, right? And we're going to reset the RAM on our graphing calculators, just in case we've got any data left or any plots on or anything like that, okay? So let's press second and the plus sign. So second and the plus sign down here. Of course, that resets the memory. 7 is reset. And then 1 is all RAM. And 2, reset it, please. So that gets rid of any data that you may have in L1 or L2 or L3, any of them. And it gets rid of any plots or graphs you may have going on in the stat plots or the y equals. Okay. So just kind of wipes the slate clean to move forward. First up, 5-number summary is the min, the Q1, the median, the Q3, and the max, right? So Q1 stands for first quartile. That's the median of the low half of the data. Q3 stands for the third quartile. That's the median of the high half of the data. The median is sometimes called the Q2 or the second quartile. Sometimes. I don't do that, but some people do. So you should hear it from somewhere, right? Sometimes it's called that. It's the middle of the middle. So that's why it's the middle of all of the data. And then, of course, the maximum is the highest value. The minimum is the lowest value. So you need the 5-number summary to divide each section of your box plot into quarters or 25% of the data. I know that this sentence now says 25%, but this was just to indicate to you that that's what you want to do here is write that percentage. Now, here's the deal. It's really cool. In our last lesson, the very last example we did, there was a value in the data that just obviously didn't fit with the rest of the data. And so that is what we would consider to be an outlier from the rest of the data. However, you can't just call anything that you think doesn't fit an outlier. It's a mathematical calculation. So an outlier is actually a calculation that we are going to find. Before we can find the calculation of an outlier, though, we need another vocabulary word, which would be the interquartile range. And the reason we need to know this one first is because we use the interquartile range or the IQR. That value helps us to calculate the value of an outlier. So you've got to know the value of your IQR before you can calculate the value of your outlier. Okay? And so the IQR, the interquartile range, is the range of the data in the box part of the box plot. It is the Q3 minus the Q1. Okay? So the higher median minus the lower median. That's the IQR, the interquartile range. Basically, it gives you the range of the middle 50% of the data. Okay? So you've got the big range, the whole thing, and then you've got the IQR, the box range. All right? Now, here is why we need the IQR. To calculate an outlier, you take the IQR times 1.5 times 1.5. That will give you any data that does not technically belong in the set and is considered an outlier of the data you have in your set. That's extreme data values, okay? And of course, all of this is telling you what I just said. Okay. So I just want to show you, we're going to do an actual example that's already done for us. Then down here using this data in the next page, we are going to create our own box plot with our 5-number summary. And we're going to figure out if there are outliers in our data set. Okay. So here it's going to be a little bit more of an estimation. And the reason I say that is because this is why scaling your number lines is so important. This scale is trash. All right, look at it. 0 to 20. Really? There's all this stuff in between that's going on, but I don't get to see it. Okay. Then 20 to 40. So the scale is going by 20s. Cool. But it really isn't the appropriate scale for the data, is it? So now this is why I said, make sure you got your straight edge. This is one of the reasons, is because what we're going to do is we're going to try and match up our minimum, right, on the graph, our Q1 on the number line, our median. I'm using this to try and find these values according to my scale because they're so trash on my scale. So I'm using my straight edge to match up. And remember that my scale is going from 20s, right? So here, that's probably a 2. Okay. I feel like it should have gone to 0 because I remember this, but that's probably a 2 is your minimum. Okay. This has got to be under halfway would be here, right? So this has got to be like an 8. And this is an estimate. I mean, these are all estimates because I really can't see what this kind of stuff is. So I'm going to go with 18 here, even though, again, estimate. This looks a little bit over, so I'm going to call this 32, right? This is over, so here would be halfway. So this is more like 67 probably. This is a little over, so we're going to call that 71. Then this is a little closer. Let's call that 77. Here, let's call that 82 and 99. It's not exactly 100. Those are those values that I'm looking at. Now, first of all, let me say, what are these? When you have data on your box plot that is represented by an asterisk or a little star, that is your outliers. So this box plot already has outliers identified. At one point, this was the max. But when we figured out the IQR times 1.75 and then added it to each side of the IQR of the Q1 and the subtracted it from the Q1, but added it to the Q3, we found that this was technically where our max had to be for our data and that these values are all outliers. So these values right here are all outlier values. They just don't fit with the rest of the data. And that totally makes sense because if you look where this box is, it's between 8 and 32. 8 and 32, right? And even if these are just kind of estimated values from my crappy scale, right? And it was given to me. I didn't create the crappy scale. It was given to me as a trash scale, but whatever. Let's actually take and do 32 minus 8. The IQR is 24. Okay. Now, let's take, it says it right here, 24, and multiply it by 1.5. And again, if you just press the multiply button, because 24 is the last number I had up there, and then 1.5, it will give me my answer, which is 36. Okay. I already did all this, so I'm just filling in. I was getting ahead of myself a little bit here. I didn't say the median, but we did put it on there as 18, right? Approximately. Again, that's why you have a better scale than this. That's why when we create our graphs and our box plots, we list the 5-number summary with any box plot because it would have been a heck of a lot easier for us had that data been given to us, those 5-number summaries, and we could do this. But I just want to show you how these outliers were calculated, okay? So you'll have to turn the page. What I'll do is I'll keep this example right here and just pull my page out, okay, to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm reading E, F, and G, but I'm going to do it on this. So you feel free to stay right here. I'm just pulling these out so we can see what we're doing. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the Q3, which is 32, and we're going to add the 36 to it. And 32 plus 36 is 68. Any data value above 68 is an outlier. Notice 67 was my max, approximately, so it probably was actually 68, but this was my approximation. 71, 77, 82, 99, all outliers. Those were data values that did not fit because they were more than 1.5 times the interquartile range. And the reason we use the interquartile range for that and not the full range is because the full range would have included that data. But where's the middle 50%? It's all way over here, right? The middle 50% is all way over here. These don't make sense in that data. They just don't. They don't fit. And so they become, instead of this being my full line and this is my max, these now become asterisks on my graph. Data values that don't fit. They're outliers. Okay? Now, I just want us to think about this a little bit because this is question F. I want you still right here and on this page and thinking about it because we're going to visualize it. Q1 minus 36 would give us a low end outlier. But what again was Q1? 8. Am I worried about negative 28 on this graph? No. Because the minimum was 2, I don't have any data values that are below negative 28. And again, because this data is all about ages, this is the ages of population in Kenya. Okay, like we saw on that one histogram the first day, we started talking about all this stuff. This is ages. I wouldn't be dealing with a negative 28 age anyway. Okay? So because of that, any data below this would be an outlier. I'm going to write it down. Any data value below negative 28 is an outlier. Okay. But because of this, I don't need to, because of the type of scale we have, because of the type of data we have, I don't even need to worry about that because I'm not going to deal with ages that are in the negatives anyway. I'm only going to deal with positive ages. Okay. That's kind of a domain question, an X value question. Your data has to be whole numbers, 0 and up, right? Can't be any negatives. So it's not going to be full integers. All right. So I've been answering these questions here. Why is there no asterisk on the low side? Can't be. We just talked about it. Okay. So that's what we want to be writing down. So now you may flip your page to this. Okay. The 4 asterisks, little stars, are outliers because they are greater than 1.5 times the IQR added to Q3. That is literally the calculation to be an outlier. All of those fall into that. That's why they're outliers. That's why they're asterisks. Are there any age values less than? We said no. And why are there no on that side of the plot? There are no asterisks on the low end because likely there wouldn't be anyway, because the 50%, the box plot was on the low end of the graph anyway. But what we're going to say here is because we would not be dealing in negative ages. Okay? Because again, they would have to be ages that are great or that are smaller than negative 28, and that's not going to happen. All right. So I want you guys to take a second. I want you to make sure you can understand that, take that in. All right. Here is a great spot to stop and pause and get all this into your graphing calculator. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that same thing to not take up all of your time entering this in the graphing calculator. So I'm literally going to pause my video and let you enter that into your graphing calculator. And when I come back, we're going to do the 1var stats. We're going to create our box plot. We're going to create it on the graphing calculator as well. We're going to figure any outliers. And again, figure, is it even possible to have outliers on the other sides? So let me just pause this. You stop, you enter your data in your graphing calculator. And when I return, that's what we're going to start with. All right, I'm back. And you can see, here, I'll put this up. I've made my graphing calculator much bigger looking right this moment. And that's just so you can see the data very clearly. So I did my graphing calculator on my screen and did my data in there. You can see that we are being asked for the 41st data value. That's because we were told that 40 students took the exam. I took a lot of time and I went back through my 40 data values and I had found that I had entered one incorrectly, but I went back through and made sure that all my data values were correct before I unpaused and moved forward. And so I'm really glad we paused for that moment and you paused for that moment to take and enter your data because, oof, yeah, 40 data values take some time to enter, and why waste that on a video, right? So here we go. Let's do our 1var stats to answer these questions down here. So I moved myself over, right? Let me see if I can give myself a little bit more space here. So I'll just put myself there, right? And just minimize myself a little bit. There we go. So we can see these guys. All right, so stat, go right to calc. Hey, I wanted right. There we go. And 1var stat, so 1 or enter. Notice my default is L1, and I can press enter and calculate. All right, so this one, I want a bunch of stuff from 1var stat, including the X bar. Not that we're going to use that to create our box plot, but I still want to know what the average is, what the mean is. Okay. There we go. Now let's get the minimum. So I've got an arrow down. So my down arrows, you can either press this, or if you're using your app, you can use the down buttons, right? So let's see, I've got my 40 data values. My minimum is 46. My Q1 is 72.5. My median is 81.5. My Q3 is 90. My max is 99. Oh, my mode, dear, that doesn't come out of my 1var stats. I actually have to look up and find that. Okay, let's look up and find that. Let's see, who do we have repeated? Well, oh, wait a minute. I have an idea. If you go to stat and you go to sort A, this sorts in ascending order, your list. So press 2, sort A, and then what it wants right here is which list you want to sort, right? We want to sort list 1. So notice L1 is this blue button right here. It's above 1. So you press second and 1 to get L1 there. End parenthesis is here. And now if you press enter, your list has now been sorted in ascending order. So press stat and enter. And look at that. You can see where all the repeats are. So now I can see where all the repeats are. So I've got 59 twice. I've got 63 twice. I've got 66 twice. I've got 70 twice. Oh dear. All right, let's hope we have a data value used more than twice, because now we've got 75 on that list. 79. Oh, 79. There's 4 79s. So right now, 79 is it. Let's keep going. Oh, 85 is twice. Oh, 88 is twice. Oh, 89 is twice. 90. 90. Oh, 90 is only 3 times. 92 is only 3 times. There it is. So what value got used 4 times, right? That's our mode that got used the most. That's 79. So that was kind of cool, right? That I just reordered my data so I could see it all at once and find my mode. All right. Well, anyway, let's go back to stat, arrow over to calc, and do 1-var stats. And again, you just press enter, it comes back up. So there it is again. Okay. Now, the IQR is, and the regular range. So let's figure out what those are, right? So 99 minus 46 is going to be our full range. So 99 minus, oh, hello. Get rid of that guy. Minus 46 is my full range, 53. And my IQR will be 90 minus 72.5. And I get 17.5 as my IQR. Okay, so let me figure out if I've got any outliers above my Q3 and any outliers below my Q1. So I'm going to take my IQR, 17.5, and I'm going to multiply it by 1.5. And that's going to give me my value to add or subtract from, add to the Q3 or subtract from the Q1 and figure out if anything's outside of that. So let's see. Let's multiply by 1.5, and I get 26.25. Okay. So now let's subtract 26.25. I have this written down right here, right? So let's take Q1, 72.5, and subtract 26.25. And what do we get? Oh, we get 46.25, right? So anything that's below 46.25 is considered an outlier. And what's our minimum? 46, which is below that. So this is no longer our minimum. So 46 is now going to be an asterisk, okay, because that's an outlier. And so now I need to go to my next lowest value. And again, if you just look at stat enter here in your list, you can see that since 46 is an outlier, 59 is the next lowest. So that is now going to be my minimum when I go to make my box plot. So any actual outliers are no longer considered part of your 5-number summary. That will mean that the min or the max changes, not the Q1, median, or Q3. Okay? All right. Well, now let's do the high end. And here's hoping that we don't have a data value higher than 99 that we have to worry about, right? Because again, this is test scores. They're out of 100. You're not going to have a test score that's greater than 100. Okay? But for these purposes, let's just figure it anyway. So second and mode goes back to your home screen. It quits out to your home screen where this is. And now what I'm going to do, so here we had said below 46.25, and we had one. It was 46. So that is actually an outlier. Okay, so I wrote that down right there. And then here, we want to take 17, let's see, 17.5 times 1.5 is the 26.25. So let's take Q3, which is 90, and let's add 26.25 to it. And so no data values above 116.25. Well, are you even going to have data values above 116.25? No, because the test is only out of 100. So you're not going to have data values that end up being outliers on the maximum end or on the high end. So, all right, I think it's time to minimize my graphing calculator screen momentarily. So now it's smaller again. And let's head over here. Let's create our box plot. Let's see, our range is still 53 because we still have to represent that outlier. And we know that we have 21 hash marks. So 53 divided by 21 is 2.5. Oop, I'm pausing you guys. That's my study hall coming in. So I'll get back to this in a minute. I'll leave all this kind of here, but pausing you guys for the time being, and I'll finish this up momentarily. See ya. Alrighty, guys. So let's take a peek here. Let me pull these back up. And sphere, there we go. And let's take a peek at getting our box plot done here. So we need our straight edge and our scale. And I think we had left off on our scale as 53 divided by 21, right? So we had said that our scale needs to be at least 3. And if I look at my data, going by 3s is probably a fairly appropriate thing. Starting on my low end, which included the 46, right? So I've got to make sure I have room to have my my outlier present. So if I start with 45 as my lowest and then go by 3s as I go, so 48 and then 51 and then 54, here I'll do this. So I'm just adding 3 each time. So my whole scale is going by 3s. So I get to 60 here, then 63, then 66, then 69, then 72. So the even ones are the small ones, right? 75, small and a little higher, right? 78, 81, 84, 87, 90, 93, 96, 99. There we go. Fitting everyone with plenty of room and even room for where I can put my outlier. So let's get a max, and then Q3 is 90, and then the median is 81.5, so a little above 81 here, and then a little in front of 81, I guess I should say, then 72.5, so a little in front of 72. And then, of course, my new minimum is 59, so slightly behind the 60, but my asterisk over here is the old minimum. So my old minimum, let me just zoom in so you can tell that that's a difference between a dot and an asterisk, right? My old minimum is now an outlier from all the information that I had gathered. So let's create our box and whisker, right? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to whisker it right to here and to here. Oh, I went too far. Sorry. For your 99, for your 59, and then here 72.5, 81.5, 90, and box. There we go. So again, remember that the median is the line that is somewhere inside the box. In our case, it looks pretty centered inside the box. Each of these sections is 25% of the data. This is our outlier. It does not fit with the rest of the data, right? Are there any outliers? Yes. And which data value? 46. Is it going to be possible to have an outlier on the high end of this data? No. And the reason is because what was the maximum grade on a test that you could have? 100. So because the maximum exam grade is 100 and outliers on the high end needed to be greater than 116.25, comma, there are no high outliers. And that's it. Let me zoom out. I know there was only that one little bit, but still, just so you can see it all. Okay. So we had a little bit more information. Let's scooch over. We had a little bit more information here than normal, right? We don't usually have the mean. We don't usually have the mode. We need this 5-number summary. So don't forget the 5-number summary is listed right here. Okay, that's the 5-number summary. And that's what we use to create our box plot. We always list the 5-number summary with our box plot. In this case, we found that outlier. So I had previously entered my data over here, right on this graphing calculator, and I am going to increase the size of my graphing calculator again, just so I can focus in on what's going to happen right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now on my graphing calculator is I'm going to press second and y equals to get into my stat plots. Notice that all my stat plots are currently off. If I press enter, I'm now in plot 1. That's why it's highlighted right here. I've got my little highlight going here. Let's press enter to turn on our plot. Now we need to change the type. So I want to go to this box plot, the 4th one over. So what I do is I arrow down and then I have to arrow right to toggle to the correct plot. When I'm highlighted over the plot I want, I press enter. And now notice my default is L1, which is where I stored my data. So that's good. Okay. That's where I want it. And now what I do is I press zoom 9 to get my stat plot on here. Notice it's my box plot. Notice my outlier. See that? Notice my outlier. Now if I press trace, I get my spider and he tells me all the values of each of these lines in my box plot, and he'll even, I'll go all the way left, look, he even tells me the value of my min, quote unquote, even though this is now my min, because this guy's an outlier. He doesn't actually fit with the data. I just want to show you real quick. You do not have to do this, but if I go in to this plot and I'm doing a regular box plot, notice it's not showing me outliers. So you want to kind of, so you can see what kind of plot it is and what list, right? So here, I'll just tell you, when it comes to the box plots, you want to kind of stick with this one that has the outliers as a just in case your data has outliers, okay? Now that I've changed, by the way, to zoom 9, I can just press graph and it'll be there, all right? Because that's what's currently on my graph is this plot. All right, but I just wanted to show you all that on the graphing calculator. So rewatch that if you want. That's why the video is so much longer than normal, is the graphing calculator stuff. Do feel free to reach out if you Google this stuff for the graphing calculator. There are other people doing it too. I'm just using your data when I'm doing this stuff. And yeah, feel free to come to office hours and get some help on this stuff, because it's not that bad, but I know that, you know, learning the graphing calculator takes some time. So please feel free to rewatch any of these at any point to get a little bit of extra help on that graphing calculator stuff. And yeah, got one more lesson in this chapter. So I'll be seeing you for that one, lesson 7. We're going to make some histograms next time. Again, make sure you got that straight edge for histograms. Not going to need the graphing calculator for histograms. We're not going to go and make a histogram graphic on the graphing calculator. So it's kind of a heads up. All right, guys, good luck I shall be seeing you very soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.